Good morning. My name's Fred Anton. I'm president of the Pennsylvania Leadership Council. As many of you know, and many of you attend our annual meeting in April, which we've had now since 1989. We have decided to have a quarterly meeting. Our annual meeting has been so successful, we thought we would try and replicate it in quarterly meetings. And I could not be more pleased with the way in which the timing has worked out on the meeting. Of course, today is June 24th. The state constitution mandates that we pass a budget by June 30th. If there were two speakers we could have that I feel will have more impact and probably have had more impact already on a cleanup of this year's legislation, which probably, unfortunately, will end with the passage of a budget. There could not be two speakers that are more appropriate. I'm not going to introduce Mike Turzai. I'm going to leave that to Lohman, but I will say the major piece of legislation that could go a long way toward solving this budget problem and balancing this budget is liquor reform, a comprehensive bill passed by the House of Representatives of Pennsylvania sometime earlier in this session. If it would be enacted by the Senate and signed by the governor, revenues from the sale of the liquor stores on a one-time basis could balance this budget in my estimation. So what has historically needed to be done, beginning my career back as far as when Dick Thornburg was governor of Pennsylvania, and with efforts made by outstanding governors like Governor Thornburg and Governor Ridge, no bill for ending this anachronism has gotten through until Mike Turzai, in a very difficult situation, got that through. Now, our second speaker is going to be Scott Wagner, who is a businessman, a very successful businessman from York, Pennsylvania, who has taken in the last few years an interest in conservative politics and has done what many businessmen say they would like to do, but don't do it. They are disgusted with what's going on in Harrisburg. They're disgusted with the way in which policy being made. They're disgusted with problems not being addressed. So they pound on the table, they rail at the legislators, but they do not get in there into the fray and get elected to the body and then go in and pound on the table and cause trouble. So I believe that that is what's going to happen with Scott Wagner. So with that preamble and with the expectation and the prediction, even though things don't look good right now, it is my prediction that our legislators and our governor will do their constitutional duty, and they will pass a budget by the deadline on June 30th. With that, I turn the program over to Lohman Henry to introduce our first speaker, Mike Turzai.
Well, Mike, Fred just put the pressure on you to try to get the job done. I have a nice introduction for Representative Turzai, who said he doesn't want a flowery introduction. The fact that he, of course, was able to get liquor privatization through the House in a historic vote, I think tells you where he is coming from. He is representative from the 28th District and, of course, the Republican Majority Leader in the State House. And with that, I'll give you our Majority Leader, State Representative Michael Turzai. Mike.
Norman, thank you so much. Fred, this gentleman, Mr. Anton, it's such an honor to be here at Pennsylvania Manufacturing Association headquarters. It's also an honor to be here with the Pennsylvania Leadership Council attendees. Loman, thank you so much for your leadership on so many important pro-growth and pro-jobs agendas. Fred Anton, I'm telling you, I think that he has been the dean in Pennsylvania governance and Pennsylvania business and industry of bringing the parties together for so many important issues. And he has never been a person who has been shy about articulating where he thinks Pennsylvania needs to go and to put some pressure on with respect to that. But he always backs it up with messaging and with real support from the grassroots level. And Fred, I see these photos and have seen them for many, many years. Photos of Fred with folks like President Reagan and Senator John Hines and Governor Thornburg, amongst many others. And Fred, it's an honor for me in the position as Majority Leader in the House of Representatives to call you a confidant and friend. Thank you for having me today. And to Loman, many of us have worked with you on many important issues. You have always been articulate. You provide facts to support the issues, and you do not rely on emotion. It's about moving forward and doing best by Pennsylvania. Thank you for your hard work. Everybody, it's just an honor to be here today. I see a good friend and colleague of mine, Representative Tim Krager. Tim is from Westmoreland County, and I consider one of my best professional friends. And I also see Senator John Eichelberger. John, great to have you here, too. Both of them outstanding legislators. I don't think I'm remiss in not seeing any others from our Capitol Hill, but those two gentlemen, please take the time to meet them. I want to just cover a couple things. First and foremost, when we came into the majority, the unemployment rate in 2011 was 8.2%. Folks, today it is 5.6% in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we are 0.7% better than the national average. When we took back the majority in 2011, after being in the minority for 4 years, we focused as the House of Representatives Republicans, oftentimes working hand in hand with folks from across the aisle, we focused on fiscal discipline, private sector job creation, and bringing integrity back to government. And some key points that I think have to get made. I'm going to talk on the private sector job creation aspects first. Because in reading, as a young legislator, the PMA newsletter, and Mr. Anton and Dave Taylor and their team in their publication would say the top 10 items that could be done to improve the economy of Pennsylvania. And I'll tell you what I did. I didn't know all the issues. I went about and learned them. Some I knew pretty well because I grew up in Allegheny County all my life. My dad, I often say this, but it's just true. My dad was a lifelong Democrat. My mom was a lifelong Republican. I came from a mixed marriage. But they were great people. They were hardworking people. And I just became convinced, and their parents were all born abroad. Mom's family from Ireland, dad's family from Hungary. They were typical immigrant families in Western Pennsylvania. grandparents worked in the coal industry or the steel industry, and every generation had better opportunities. And when you had thriving companies that paid family-sustaining wages and salaries, you would have good communities and good schools. And I knew from being an attorney in the business sector, representing many of these manufacturing concerns or organizations that supported those concerns, particularly in the manufacturing arena, that they wanted the opportunity to grow their businesses and to provide great opportunities for people that work for them and for their families. These same people were the people that you would meet every day who were involved with the United Way, the Little League, the YMCA, and the churches. And to them, politics in many ways was, something to be disdained. But nobody in great numbers was telling their story. We all know that the trial lawyers and many of the unions, and my parents were union people, were up here, particularly from a leadership level in those organizations, not necessarily representing, I think, some of the rank and file people back home. And I think that the story had to get told about people that were making the economies work in small and big towns all across this Commonwealth. There's a reason we went from 8.2% in terms of the unemployment rate to 5.7%, and it's because we have actually done real stewardship items with respect to growing an economy. Between Fred and Jean Barr of the State Chamber of Business and Industry, we have done lawsuit abuse reform. Not small lawsuit abuse reform, the Fair Share Act. We did unemployment compensation reform, where we reduced expenditures on an annual basis to employers by over $500 million. We made it more efficient to put pipeline through a reform with respect to the Public Utility Commission so that there was a growth in the utility industry along with safety. We took the business tax climate and increased what are called net operating losses so that manufacturers and tech companies that inevitably have losses can make use of those monies to invest in capital and people. We took the corporate net income tax and we actually got away from taxing assets and payroll and moved it all to sales. And we did, in fact, close the Delaware loophole in a narrow and appropriate fashion and took the issue off the table without penalizing people that employ people in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And our commitment to eliminating the second business tax in Pennsylvania, the capital stock and franchise tax, means that there's a continued phase out, and our caucus stood strong with respect to that position. In and of themselves, and I'm going to we repealed the sprinkler code and made changes to how the building code works in the state. There's a lot of other, we eliminated inheritance taxes with respect to small businesses and with respect to family farms. Item after item after item. None of them make the front page in and of themselves, but collectively, they have resulted in a growing economy with 250,000 new jobs and an unemployment rate going from 8.2 to 5.6% in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, beating the national average. And guess what? We will continue to have good schools and good communities because we've turned the state of Pennsylvania around. And with respect to the development of natural gas in the state, we have the most restrictive environmental regulations that we put into place to protect citizens and the environment, while at the same time making sure that this industry continue to grow. But why? Because it's helped create the 250,000 jobs in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. They are well-paying jobs, not only in the industry, but in the ancillary industries like architecture and engineering and transportation of water. Environmental engineers to make sure that it's all meeting the restrictions that are in place. I just met a dad who said, I am so excited about my daughter being back in Western Pennsylvania. She just got a great job as an environmental engineer, and it's her job to make sure that the water that goes back in is clean. He was unbelievably proud of her and was so happy that she was back home. That is the thing that Pennsylvania needs to continue to have happen. Now, I want to say this about fiscal responsibility. Folks, when we took over office, the federal stimulus money of $2 billion, we knew it was going to be gone. The federal stimulus under President Obama was not about infrastructure. It was about propping up state governments who had gone into debt with overspending and overborrowing, and they could not sustain their budgets with respect to their heavy increases in state spending. Our budget under Governor Rendell in 8 years' time went from 20 billion to 28 some billion, a growth of over 50% when the rate of inflation was just over 20%. The debt service on an annual basis, because of his increases in debt, which we have to pay back with tax dollars. Debt is not manna from heaven. Went from under 700 million annually to well over $1 billion annually. When we came in, we had one choice. Are you going to make some tough decisions with the budget? And how? Are you going to tighten your belts? Or are you going to immediately increase taxes? Well, when the recession hit America's families and families of Pennsylvania, what did they do? What did small businesses do? They tightened their belts. That's what we did. And we did it without sacrificing public education. I think the governor gets a completely disingenuous rap about public education. When we took over, public education stood in 2010 and 11 at $8.89 billion. Governor Rendell was relying on over $1 billion in federal stimulus money to prop that up. Let's just be honest about it. In 11-12, with state tax dollars, we increased public education K through 12 dollars by a little over $300 million, while reducing overall expenditures in our budget by something like $2 billion. We found fraud in welfare, and we ferreted it out, and we went down to a spending level that was at the same level of 08-09. We reduced spending in real dollars, not in adjusted inflation dollars. And the House Republicans, along with our Senate colleagues, carried that. Washington, that debt limit continues to grow and grow and grow. It is true that in Pennsylvania, we have a balanced budget. We have to. We don't get to print money. So we have to honestly estimate our revenues and honestly estimate our expenditures to match it. But you do have capital debt over here, and then debt service appears on your general fund balance. In one program, RCAP alone, it had increased under Governor Rendell 5 times from under $2 billion annually to over $4 billion annually in just 8 years, a growth of over 300%. For the first time ever, we reduced our debt limit by $600 million in a unanimous vote in both chambers, a measure that I had continued to push. We wanted $1 billion. National Review Online said 60% of something is better than 100% of nothing. And we've actually reduced our credit limit in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we have never increased it. on any front. Integrity in government. We in the House, led by the Speaker, Sam Smith, for the first time ever in both sessions, have passed a constitutional amendment to reduce the size of the legislature. And we are very serious about reducing the House of Representatives from 203 to 153 members. And we hope that it continues to move forward. It is a constitutional amendment, so it has to go through 2 sessions. We did not get it ratified by the Senate in the first session, but we're hopeful that it will happen in this session. We think it's an important statement to the people of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that we are serious about reforming ourselves as a body too. And we do support limited government. When we passed privatization with the help of John Taylor, our Republican chair from the city of Philadelphia, in March of 2013, wholesale retail wine and spirits was all privatized. The fiscal note says it would bring in over $1 billion in upfront revenue. All those new establishments would now pay business taxes that are not paid today. Now, do not think that we are not going to still collect the essentially 24% sales tax on wine and spirits transactions, because we will. And you don't get to count that as profit if you're the LCB, that $400 million in revenue. The Department of Revenue, when it collects the PIT is not their profit. They're a collection, right? That's all it is. It's not profit. It's a tax, and we're going to still continue to tax it. We think, when we passed it, that it was really about government reform, getting rid of the conflict of interest of being the party that sells it and the party that polices it. And let's be like every other state and let the private sector do that, because we believe in limited government, and we're going to continue to license, regulate, educate, and do law enforcement. Public pension reform, not an easy task, but we have a product in front of us that moves new hires and new hires only to a defined contribution type plan. So it shifts investment risk from the Commonwealth school districts and taxpayers, but it still delivers truly competitive benefits to new hires in today's marketplace. Any young person looking at those benefits would say, I want that job, compared to what they would find in the private sector. By making those changes, it helps protect the benefits earned by current employees and retirees, because the system is unfunded to the extent of about $50 billion over the next 30-some years. It responsibly meets our statutory obligation to the systems. It includes no arbitrage gambles, no collar reductions, no gimmicky quick fixes. We do not shirk our responsibility. And it puts all the savings back into reducing the unfunded liability, such that you can move final solvency based on projections and assumptions from fiscal year 2044 up to 2038 for CSRS and up to 2040 for PSRS. It safeguards our Commonwealth's credit rating, and it would provide budgetary relief to school districts in the terms of an appropriation that would help us pick up their percentage costs of the contributions without reducing what our contributions to those to the systems would be. We're hoping we can get that over the goal line. I'll end on this note. With Speaker Smith, with Chairman Adolph, the House today in the Appropriations Committee hopes to move a very responsible budget. It does not include tax increases. It lives within our means. It spends what we believe are approachable in terms of revenues, and we're going to move that budget bill tomorrow on the House floor. We have been working diligently with our Senate colleagues and the governor's office on meeting that constitutional deadline. We've met it for the past 3 years. Every year, we've gotten the budget done on time, allowing for predictability and stability. And it is certainly our goal and objective to have that done. And I certainly don't want to let down Fred Anton. With that, I will take questions, and I cannot thank you enough for having us here today.
Anyone who wants to ask a question, please come to the microphone over here and then sort of line up along the side. That way everybody will be able to hear you.
Make sure there's a question mark at the end.
Yes, please.
No speeches, just questions. Go ahead.
My name is Corey Moore, and I am a homeschooler. And I am representing the Christian Homeschool Association of Pennsylvania. We're not just voters, we're campaigners. And if you know Generation Joshua, that's what it's about. My question is, what can we do so that homeschooling can be freed up in Pennsylvania? Because right now, 48 other states have better homeschool laws than Pennsylvania.
You know, it's interesting. I know back home, I'm in the northern suburbs of Allegheny County. We have a good number of homeschool families. And some of them are good friends of mine. Now, they seem to be doing a very, very good job of it. It's interesting. They make use of the public school facilities on occasion. And I believe that both of our public schools have good relations with many of the homeschooling families. And so it's very accessible. I will tell you this. I do not think there's one size fits all for educating kids. We have been very, very supportive of the educational improvement tax credits. We doubled those for opportunity scholarships for children that want to go to, Catholic, Christian, other private, or other public schools. And that's pre-K through 12. I am more than open to hearing what the suggestions are that could make Pennsylvania better for homeschoolers. I'm definitely open to that. We think, the vast majority of the 1.9 million kids in Pennsylvania K through 12 are in the traditional public schools. So we have a commitment to doing a very, very good job for our public schools. But do we think that certain kids do better in a private setting or a homeschool setting or a charter setting? We do. We're very, very open. We are also committed to making sure that we have really good, accountable public schools too. So we're certainly willing to work with you on any issue.
Question, sir?
Good morning, Bruce Rader. I'm from Berks County, Pennsylvania.
Hey, Bruce, how are you?
My subject is House Bill, Senate Bill 76, and my question is, what is your position on House Bill 76?
We ran it as an amendment, and I voted against it.
What is House Bill 76?
It is designed to take away local funding and bring educational funding to the state. So you would get rid of the property taxes, which is the base of most. It's not the entire local portion of the tax, but it raises about $14 billion for public education across the state today. And then we, of course, spend over $10 billion on public education on the state for a total of about $24 billion. I think the component part of the $14 billion that's property taxes is around $12 billion, I believe. And then there's other types of local taxes that make up the balance of the $14 billion. We passed in the House with 149 votes, bipartisan support, a bill called 1189. The amendment to 1189 was based on House Bill 76. I know that the vote total was less than 60, yes. Our vote total for 1189 was 149 yes votes. It allowed school districts to shift completely away from property taxes to another tax if they so desired, up to elimination, but that decision would be made on a district by district level.
Thanks.
But what is your,
Sir,
Yeah, no, I told you, I voted against 76.
next question.
Good morning, Representative
Yes, sir.
Turzai, and thank you for your remarks here today. Conspicuously absent in your presentation was House Bill 1507, Paycheck Protection. Now that that bill has cleared committee and you are the majority leader, what is your intention on paycheck protection?
I have been publicly in favor of paycheck protection. If we have, I may be the only leader elected official in leadership who's been out front on it, although I have to tell you, I know Speaker Smith has been very supportive of it as well. If we have the votes in the House of Representatives, we would run the bill.
Next question.
I do not believe we have the votes at this time. We do not. But we have a good group that are working on it. Now, you know, we have no votes from the other side of the aisle. And the one thing I do want to say about it is it cannot be perceived as a partisan issue. What we did when we did our presentation to the House caucus on that issue is we actually got copies of state and local paychecks. And I asked my staff to highlight exactly what was being taken out of the paychecks so that people could tangibly see what was being done and what was being collected on the state level by the Department of Revenue. And we also quantified what that number was. Now, as you know, there's two different deductions. One is for political action contributions, and one is for quote-unquote union dues, which arguably includes some soft money, not hard money. But it also includes, sort of other things that come with the representation by a union. Paycheck protection, as drafted in that bill, does not eliminate the obligation of union members to pay those dues or those PAC contributions. They still have to pay them. It's just that government wouldn't be collecting them. Now, the other important thing with respect to that is this, I think. As you know, you can, two important points. The governor or school boards can negotiate those out today. When the governor negotiates with the public sector unions, you can negotiate out the need or the ability to collect those dues. It's not been done. Now, I do believe on the school district level, out of the 500 school districts, some school districts, they are very few, but some school districts have negotiated that out. In addition, in law, the law that was put into place with respect to collecting those dues, the union dues part of it is in law. It doesn't mandate that you do it. It does not mandate, but it allows it to be a subject of collective bargaining. In addition, with respect to the PAC contributions, there's not even enabling legislation. It has just become a practice in the negotiation of contracts without the enabling legislation to collect that. My own perspective is I don't know why we would be in the business, particularly after Bonusgate, why we would be in the business as a government to collect, at a minimum, the political action contributions, let alone the issue of the union dues. And we had a very straightforward caucus and presentation with respect to that. I just don't think the issue's all that complicated. Now, that's my perspective. But it cannot be partisan. It cannot be about going after anybody in particular. It needs to be about good government reform, which I think it is. Sir.
Thanks for coming here today.
Thank you.
My name is Ryan Bannister. I'm with the PACC. We're Pennsylvania's largest grassroots education organization.
Yes, sir.
In a couple of your comments, you mentioned top-down never works, top-down approach. You mentioned limited government. Common Core defies all those things. When are we going to stand up to that give local control back to the parents, back to the school districts, get the special interest businesses, outside funding, and federal government out of education, and really address it, and the data collection aspect of it, really address it on the local level in the state.
Sir, you raise an important point. The governor and the Pennsylvania State Department, or the Board of Education, the State Board of Education, did implement Common Core. What we did is we passed a resolution in the House of Representatives. I think it was a unanimous vote. I may be wrong about that, but I'll check on it. That gave instruction as to how we wanted to see the implementation, and we wanted to focus on the local option. I will get you the language of the resolution that we passed, review that, and then we'll talk about it. And I will also have you talk to our staff members on what the House of Representatives have done with respect to that issue. But I will get my staff with you. If you can just give me your card before I leave. Thank you. Sir.
Good morning, Rod Miller, Berks County.
Hey,
You
sir,
mentioned
how are you?
welfare reform,
Yes, sir.
but you didn't elaborate. I just want to offer a set of photographs for your benefit for later.
Sure.
The city of Reading is the poorest city in the nation.
You know, I knew that Reading had some difficult times, but I did not know how that's measured, but I take your word at
The
it.
major contributor is the welfare reform or the welfare system.
Yes, sir.
To sum it up, to get to the question, the law presently in existence says if you destroy a property such as a motel, you're criminally responsible. If you destroy an apartment that you're renting, that's civil. Landlords in Reading have given up because there's no money to regroup the loss.
To recoup that.
If they sue because that person that destroyed that property, that was thrown out because they were 2 months behind in the rent, they're bitter and they destroyed. The question is, can you change the law so that destruction of properties in the city of Reading done by welfare recipients will be a criminal offense so that landlords have some teeth in the law to recoup their losses?
Sir, I will definitely look into that, and I'm glad to take the photos. And I would say this, you know, believe me, I can understand if you're a property owner and your property has been abused, you should have recourse. Sir.
Good morning. Will the budget be passed without a tax being placed, an extraction tax being placed on the Marcellus shale gas?
Look, we are going to pass a budget without it in the House of Representatives. And there, I think, is a case to be made that revenues from privatization could adequately get us through this budget. Are there advocates on both sides of the chamber, in the House of Representatives, on both sides of our chamber? I have some Republicans and some Democrats who are advocating for it, yes. Are there folks over in the Senate, I believe on both sides of their chamber, advocating for it? The answer is yes. We are not going to start off the budget utilizing that kind of a tax. The impact fee's in place. It essentially amounts to about a 2% severance tax, a little over 2% severance tax as it is. I realize we call it an impact fee. 60% of those monies are going to the local communities where the activity is occurring. 40% comes to Harrisburg for primarily environmental remediation programs, primarily. It has worked. $250 million annually has been put back into the economy and into infrastructure. I think it was an appropriate approach. But I would be disingenuous in saying that there's not support for this. I'm not one, and we're going to start without relying on that, but we'll see where it goes. Yes, sir.
Hi, thank you, Representative Turzai. I appreciate your comments, and I would encourage you to get that information out to voters because I haven't heard a lot of that, so I would encourage you to do that. But
thank you, sir.
Concerning House Bill 1013, the homeschool bill my wife referred to earlier, it will add, we're as taxpayers, we're contributing a lot of money.
Oh, no,
to public
you're
school.
paying taxes. I remind people that all the time.
We're not asking for anything in return. So to me, it's a win-win situation. Will you support House Bill 1013 and put it on the schedule because it'll save the public schools
Money as well.
billions,
Sir,
over the next decade.
Who's the sponsor of House Bill? It's not ringing a bell. to
Mark
me.
Gillen.
Oh, is it Mark's
Yes.
bill? Okay. You have an outstanding legislator there on Mark
Yeah,
Gillen.
we've been helping Christian Homeschool Association in Pennsylvania, so I have
Is
been.
it out of committee? Do you know?
Yes, it's out of committee, and it's, I guess they would technically say it's in the Rules Committee. We've talked to people at your
Oh,
office.
okay. I apologize. It just the number was not.
It's okay.
I just wasn't registering, and I apologize. I will talk to Representative Gillen today. I will talk to Chairman Clymer today about House Bill 1013, and I'll get more information and just see where we are in the process. If it's in rules, it may be. Rules, as you know, is a committee I do chair. It's most put into place around the budget because our rules say that's when you have to bring all bills through rules, and I'll find out what the status
All right,
is.
I appreciate it. I'll give you this.
Thank you.
Good morning again. Bruce Rader. Another question on
Yes,
the
sir.
pension system. You mentioned privatizing the state pension system for future hires. Would that apply to all? Could you elaborate on the pension system, and does that apply to new hires only? Does that apply to every single state employee?
It applies to new hires. We would honor the commitment we have with existing retirees and existing employees. And the goal would be to honor that commitment, and because a contractual arrangement has been made. And we would say to new hires, it's a new deal. We want to move to a defined contribution versus a defined pension approach. And I must say that in our House caucus, there's a high level of support for that. We're gonna continue to work it. We are not getting support from our colleagues on the other side of the aisle at the present time, and I think it's short-sighted because our pensions right now, and it's in part because of the market, it's in part of some things that the legislature has done, and it is about 65% funded. Now keep in mind, that's an actuarial value, and so it's the ability to be able to pay benefits as people retire. So it's over time as people retire, and then they stop when people are deceased, right? So it's actuarially estimated. But there's no doubt that we need to find some savings to bring down the unfunded liability. This bill does that. We put those savings into reducing the unfunded liability. We have competitive benefits for new hires. And I think the most important thing is this. People in the private sector have been in the defined contribution space since the mid-1990s. This is not ahead of the curve. This is retro. We are catching up with the private sector, and we're about 20 years behind. We have to be more competitive in the 21st century. Also, many young people, new hires, like the portability, and they from day one begin to earn that money in their defined contribution plan, and they can take it with them. And even in the teaching profession, my dad was a teacher. People stayed just like they did with the United States Steel. They stayed with the job, and United States Steel is still a great company. Or I'm thinking of a company like Draveau, that's a company that's no longer in Western Pennsylvania, but was a big employer when I was growing up. People stayed with an employer their entire lives. That's not even true for teachers anymore. People want to go in, they might want to do a good 10 years, and they may want to move on. And I think the teaching profession and other state state positions, they're all important roles. But it's just that we're catching up with the 21st century. When taxpayers are out there and they're paying hard-earned money for good schools and good government, they're all in defined contribution plans. And they think that that's where the public sector needs to move to. But I think the fairest approach is to make that for new hires. And that's where we are in the House of Representatives.
Does anyone else have a broad-based question that has not been covered already by Speaker Turzai? I did not want to allow dialogue, but only questions, but with that, we will conclude. And Mike, I'd like to say, let me make a comment on it. I want to thank you, and I want to thank you for the I know the interests of various people here in some of these various difficult subjects you've talked about, particularly paycheck protection, particularly pensions. And as far as I'm concerned, you forthright and comprehensively covered these issues. And I feel very gratified. I feel that while things are up in the air, you certainly not ducked any of these questions. And I want to thank you very much.
It was mentioned earlier, Senator Eichelberger is with us today. If you look at a lot of what has happened in the state Senate over the last few years, how long's it been now, Mike? What, about 8 years since you were elected? Now running for a third term. The election of Senator Eichelberger and Senator Fulmer, which was a stunning upset in Pennsylvania politics at the time, set us on the current modern course of more conservative, although unfortunately not totally conservative leadership from our legislative bodies in Harrisburg. But they have started us down the path, and our next speaker is adding a jolt of energy to that. He is Senator Scott Wagner, who was elected to the Senate by very unique circumstances, running in a special election. He was not the party's pick in that special election. But he ran a write-in vote. And for the first time in the history of the Commonwealth, which as you know extends back quite a way, we had a state senator nominated in a special election by a write-in vote. And we all know how difficult it is to win anything on a write-in vote, let alone a state Senate seat. But Scott Wagner accomplished that. He's now been nominated for a full 4-year term. He is the president and owner of Penn Waste in York County and KBS Trucking in Thomasville. I've known Scott for a number of years. He's a small businessman who, as Mr. Anton expressed earlier, didn't just sit back and complain, but he has for many years been involved in helping candidates for the House and the Senate all across the Commonwealth, a number of whom are currently sitting in each of those respective caucuses, get elected. Scott is now there himself. He has a number of important legislative priorities, and he is here to talk with us about them today. Senator Scott Wagner. Hey, we got the memo. Good take, Fred.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to be short. I really don't have anything to talk about. There's nothing going on up here in Harrisburg. But I just have a sort of an outline, and then we can have some dialogue. And I was intrigued by Speaker Turzai's comments, and what amazes me is we all have all these great ideas. What's it going to take to get them done? I mean, it's like. It's yak, 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 and no action over here. And it's throughout Harrisburg. But let me just, I've been here, and Loman, thank you for the introduction. I was elected in a special election. And the reason I'm here in Harrisburg is that, almost 11,000 people in the 28th Senate District went out on March 18th, and they wrote my name in because they wanted change. And I'm not a polished politician. I'm a business owner. I've been in business basically almost from age 20, 22, and I have multiple companies, and I employ a lot of hardworking people that I think are getting shafted. And, as I, started my campaign last September when Senator Wall announced that he was not going to run again for another term, I spent a lot of time out and it was actually very refreshing to get back out, meet a lot of people. And again, but over my 35 years of business, I've talked to a lot of customers, our employees, and just I've had great opportunities. But as I got out in the field more and I talked to people, obviously school taxes were a huge issue, and you run into the veterans, people on fixed incomes. It was refreshing to get out and meet a lot of these people, and it's I will tell you it's been very, very enjoyable, and it's also been highly motivating for me, to go through this process. So I did win the primary, and I'm on to the November election. And but I will tell you, between now and the end of the year, things are going to get very lively, and they will be very lively over the next couple weeks. But let me just sort of, if I can, in a snapshot, talk about, what I see. And I'm trying to say this in the nicest way, and I'm learning the spin, and my campaign team is here. But what I can say to the people in my district, and those of you sitting in the audience, I want you to look at me as a refreshing person that has a career already. I have a great career. I'm a garbage guy. I love being in the garbage business, and I love being with my people. But I already have another career, and I'm going to Harrisburg not for another career. I'm doing 2 4-year terms, and I'll be going back to Harrisburg. I'm 58, or back to York. I'm 58 years old, so I'll be over 65, but I'm here to do the right thing. I think I'm a reasonably smart person, but where I am very smart is I have learned to hire the best people and surround myself with the best people. So, I'd like to acknowledge my Chief of Staff, Jason Hyes, in the audience. Jason worked for Senator Eichelberger for 5 years. Jason went to the private sector for 4 years and then came back. And so, John, I appreciate you hiring Jason and the opportunity for Jason to come on board with me. And it's really good because Jason is exceptionally knowledgeable about the issues up here. And I think, for me, again, when you're a business owner, you surround yourself with people. You can't make every decision. You have to have good people in your organization. So, up here in my organization, we have 3 staff people, which would include Jason in my Harrisburg office and 3 in York. But here's the bottom line with what's going on in Harrisburg. Everyone wants to get reelected. That's what this is all about. They want to come back over and over. And take like John Eichelberger. John's got a career. He's in the insurance business, has an agency out in Altoona. So John doesn't need to be here for the rest of his life. And so, but he's up here because he sees an opportunity to make change. But in the House and in the Senate, everybody wants to get reelected, and it's baffling to me. It's not baffling, but it is. And no one wants to make big changes. And right now in the Senate, we're having an issue over paycheck protection. We are probably within 2 to 4 votes of having enough votes to pass paycheck protection. And so, leadership does not want to put that vote up and have, a 22 yes situation and a 5 no situation. But you know what? I come from the real world. Let's find out who the real men and women are. Okay? You got to put your vote out there. You got to stick your neck up. This hiding behind, we don't have enough votes, is pure baloney to me. So we need to work on that. My largest priority right now is paycheck protection, and I believe that paycheck protection is the very tip of the iceberg. And under the tip of the iceberg, you will find pension reform and you'll find school tax reform. But if we don't deal with this paycheck protection issue, we're going nowhere. And folks, I'm telling you, if we don't pass this paycheck protection somehow, some way, and we don't do it in the next 30 to 60 days or 90 days, or we do it before the end of the year, we'll talk about the upcoming governor's race. But trust me when I tell you, your school taxes are going up, pension problem's not going to get solved. There's way too much influence from the forces that enjoy the paycheck protection or the dues withdrawal. On a positive note, yesterday the House State Committee voted yes 15 to 10, so their bill is out, and as Speaker Turzai said, they currently do not have enough votes. Well, let's have again, I'm not a seasoned guy here and I don't know all the proper lingo, but they should get it on the floor and they should have a vote, and let's see who the real people are and the non-real people are. Let's find that out. So, and we need to do that in the Senate, and I think we're very close. And you know, I've talked a lot about paycheck protection, you know, the last couple of weeks, but the largest organization that has the power is the PSEA. And the PSEA, Speaker Turzai talked about this, but the PSEA has a union representative at every union negotiation in every school district in the state of Pennsylvania. And I'm going to talk just real quickly about my, you know, one of my school districts. In my district, it's one of the 11 districts. And I spoke on the floor yesterday, and I've done some substantial research. In 2005, 2006, the salaries in this district were $10,048,000. In 2010, 2011 year, 5 years later, those salaries were $13,200,000. They went up over $3 million. It was a 31.77% increase in a 5-year period. So I'm learning more and more, how did this happen? Because teachers, the contracts are being negotiated with certain cost of living increases. But what I have found, that there is the credit fast lane step-up process, where someone will come out of college with a bachelor's, and you have to understand, I know enough to be dangerous, but I know enough to have some good facts. That somebody will come out of college and have a bachelor's, and they will then get a master's. And that master's will yield another $10,000 or $15,000 in additional income. There are additional credits that they can take and really fast track, you know, their salary level. In this 5-year period, there were 50 teachers that received anywhere from 40 to 118% increases because of this step-up process. Now, I've been told, and again, I know enough to be dangerous, that at every negotiation, the school district, the school board, each school board can negotiate the step-up process. There's a lot of things. They can negotiate the withholding of union dues and all this kind of stuff, but it's being done at a local level. And so now you have basically 500 school districts around the state that they have negotiating teams. Now, I've done a lot of negotiating over the years in business, and there are good negotiating teams and bad negotiating teams. So the PSEA has so much influence in this whole process, and the PSEA is clearly against any pension reform. You know, getting on the subject of pension reform, listen, my companies since basically the late 1980s, we had a 401k program, and it's worked well, and we have great performance, and you know, it can perform well if you decide to put more in, and depending on how it's managed, it's a great program. But we have a system that is out of control. Back to this same school district that I just talked about, where the salaries went from 10 million to 13 in a 5-year period. The average salary 5 years ago was $84,800. Okay, and that was in the 2010-11 year. Just add 2.5% on for the next 3 years. The average salary in this district is now $91,000, and they work 180 days a year. And so, you know, I have a lot of respect for teachers, but you know, what about the truck driver? What about the bricklayer? What about the mason? I mean, how's 91,000 working out in their world? Okay, it's not working out. And so, you know, somebody's getting shafted, and you know, we have created a special class, and this special class is doing really well. And I respect teachers and you know what they do, but they also should get more into a merit system. And you know, in our company and the private sector and most companies, and I think you know most companies in this room or anybody we know, you know, that if someone's not doing their job and they're not performing, you make a change. And you know, there's Jack Welch, who was a former CEO of GE, believes in turning over 10% of your workforce every year, and you know, weeding out non-performers and focusing on your top performers. But in this school district, here's another problem. Let's talk about the pension problem. In 2007, we had a superintendent in this school district that retired after 38 years of service. His salary was approximately somewhere between, I think, 140 and 150, but in the 145 range. This gentleman retired in 2007 at age 60. Okay, you ready for this? His pension per year for the rest of his life is $115,000 a year, okay? Now, if he lives from 60 to 80, that's 20 years. Multiply that by 115, and I'm not putting any escalators in because I don't think there are. I don't know enough because this again, the information that I'm working on these days is just, it's mind-boggling. But he will receive $2.3 million in a 20-year period. Now, I'm gonna tell you, I'll put $1,000 on the table right now and tell you, and I will bet, and I know I'm not wrong, that he will receive more in his 20 years of retirement than he did in his 38 years of service with the education system. To make it worse, there was a superintendent that came in right behind him that took his job when he retired in 2007. She retired last November with 30 years of service. She's getting $93,000 a year. She's going to get approximately $1.8 million. Again, 30 years of service compensation versus what she'll get from 60 to 80. And if she lives beyond, this is it's a tragedy. And this is a system that listen, it's been set up, it's been abused. We can't keep doing this. We're going down on the Titanic. I'm a smart guy. And if anybody out here wants to drown, then folks, enjoy drowning, because I'm not going to drown. We have got to do something. The sharks are in the water, they're circling, but now we have a mindset over here in Harrisburg. Well, I got to get reelected, and we can't change anything, and it's yak yak yak. But the school system is a huge monster, and so maybe we need a statewide teachers contract. But I can tell you something. It is to think that there are 500 school boards out there negotiating. And by the way, you talk about corruption and conflict of interest and ethics. There are school boards that have in my home district, there's a teacher on the school board, a teacher teaches in another district, and she's a union member. And 2 years ago, I helped a school board member get on this board, and the gentleman we got off the board, his wife was a teacher in the district. And I read, I believe it was out in Butler, PA or somewhere, last year there was a sweetheart, or there was some early contract that was negotiated with the school board where the president of the school board is a former teacher, his daughter's a teacher, and it was, I can't remember the term, but it was out on I read the story. But so after this contract was cut, in November, school board election kicked off 4 school board members. They got fresh members. They came in and they basically rescinded the contract in February. I mean, we are number 5 in corruption. I think actually we should be number 1 from what I see. So, okay, but again, we talk about pension. Everybody should be in a 401k system. We can't go back and change the promises we made. I don't know how we're going to pay for them, but we can't keep kicking the can down the road. On the property tax reform, it looks like Senate Bill 76 is not going to make it to the floor because we've had a couple sponsors pull back, Democrats, I think 2 pulled back. So, it's sad, but again, I think we need to continue to work on pension reform and paycheck protection, and some of this, some of the if we can work on the tax reform, but clearly we've got this bigger problem, and that's the state budget. So I wrap up on the school spending. I think we have out of control salaries and pensions. They're driving all the costs. And you can go through the data. And I'm going to move into the state budget, but I'll have a comment that's sort of linked into the state budget and the school system. Probably about a month ago, the Democrats on the floor and the PSEA sent out their monthly magazine in March and April endorsing Rob McCord, and there was all kind of probably 2 or 3 pages in there, 4 pages, devoted to trashing Governor Corbett. He's cut $1 billion out of this, the school funding. When I was first elected, I sent a letter on my Senate stationery to all my districts, school districts, asking for 5 years of salary history, 5 years of tax revenue, 5 years of state revenue, and 5 years of the fund balances. One of the school districts in my district received 22% more from the state, and it was $3 million more. So this baloney that Corbett has cut state money is absolutely not true. What did happen was the federal government, our President Obama, came in with the candy man, came in with his candy truck, his snowball truck, the Mr. Softy truck that goes down the street, and he unloaded 2 years worth of candy and then left. And so really, that $1 billion that disappeared was all the federal stimulus money, But guess what? Let's all be real. It was all put on a credit card because the national debt's greater. So, the candy man is alive and well in Washington, and you can hear the bell ringing on the truck. But on this, on the state budget, we currently do not have 26 votes in the Senate, and I was asked by Speaker or Majority Leader Pledge's office to come down, and I went down. This is where I am right now. I'm not here, and I'm not here. I want to see paycheck protection. I want to see pension reform. Absolutely, those two are, listen, I don't live far. I'll drive back and forth all summer until we get this done and get it done right. Governor Corbett is right on this issue. We need to address the spending side of the equation before we can even talk about the revenue side. And I was with a group of gentlemen probably about 6 weeks ago, and they're in the money investment business, and we had our meeting regarding something else. At the end of the meeting, they said, Scott, we want to share something else with you. And they gave me some information which was presented to Governor Corbett 2 years ago. And basically, it was very simple. Consider moving all the pension money, $71 billion of CSRS and PSRS money, into index funds with, say, a company like Vanguard. Do you know how much that would save in management fees a year? $900 million. Okay? Now, I have a list of the PSRS board and the CSRS board, and it's a friend of a friend and a friend and a friend, and it's patronage and all this kind of stuff. So I'll be railing on this over the next couple weeks. But, I'm part of a family office trust company, and, our 401k for Penn Waste and KBS is managed within this family office trust company, and we have a large number of families, a large number of 401ks, and, a lot of the families have their personal assets in there being managed. But our fees are on an average of 55 basis points. The state is paying 137 basis points. And if you go into an index fund, it's probably 10 to 15 basis points. And I think history will show that the index funds actually probably outperform. So bottom line is, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and this is not I know enough to be dangerous in a lot of these areas. But to me, if I was negotiating with the money managers, I'd pick up the phone, and I guarantee you, probably by 4 o'clock today, I could whack 25 to 50 basis points off, saying, you need to look at your fees, and without stepping on insurance agents. Sometimes, if you're a business owner, the worst thing you can do is become friendly with your insurance broker and play golf every year, because I guarantee you're not getting the best rates. So, this is a fact of life. The Titanic's going down. We have some tough things we have to deal with. But it's when you look at Harrisburg. We have 253 legislators. We have 2,600 staffers, and we have 2,000 plus lobbyists. And they're over here in a massive way. Now, what was interesting when probably up until 24 hours before my special election, if I walked into a room, people looked for the exits and scattered. And because here he comes, the guy's nuts. And but now I will tell you that on April 2nd, I now have more friends than I've ever had in my life, and I have more cards. And I met a lot of interesting people. I've had a lot of union representatives in my office. I'll see just about anybody. But there's a lot going on in Harrisburg. So, with that, I just have a few comments, and I'm going to talk about the upcoming governor's race. And I'm highly concerned. Listen, I have been critical of Governor Corbett for the last 3 years. I think Governor Corbett has done a lot of good things. I think he has done a terrible job messaging. I think I met with Governor Corbett 3.5 years ago, and my little bit of insight was hire and surround yourself with the best people. And he didn't do that. He bought people over from the Attorney General's office. He's got tons of lawyers over there. And I just think the messaging has been very bad, and he's getting pounded hard. But I'll tell you, my greater concern is I'm from York. We have Tom Wolf from York, and Tom is a very nice guy. But there's more to the story. Tom is a 4th generation business owner. And what concerns me when I see this picture on Politics PA, and Tom Wolf has his hands, and he's holding Rick Bloomingdale's hand and Frank, the treasurer from the AFL-CIO, it's very concerning. So, and then when I pick up the York paper over the weekend,
and this gets back to the paycheck protection. Wolf's contributions, Wolf's campaign reporting receiving about 2.3 from political committees. That includes 450 on June 2nd from an American Federation of Teachers committee based in Washington, okay? Not a surprise. 100,000 on May 22nd, May 23rd, and 400,000 on June 3rd from the Pennsylvania State Education Association, the PSEA, okay? And 225 from the Democratic Governors Association. So, folks, Tom Wolf is going to be owned by the unions. And you know what? I'd rather keep the devil we have than the devil we don't know. So I will tell you that I am going to support Governor Corbett. I'm going to continue to beat the crap out of him. And I want him to be the next governor, because if we have 4 years or 8 years of a Governor Wolf, we're going nowhere. And it's a fact of life. And I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And like I said, I'm highly disappointed in the leadership that's come from the governor's office. But maybe lightning will strike, and Fred and Loman will say prayers at night, and we'll have a miracle. But we have a lot of issues. Pennsylvania is a great state. We have we're close to many major cities. One thing I failed to mention is I have an interest in a business in Greenville, South Carolina. And we sell industrial engines, backup generators, and we're located 4 miles from the BMW plant. And BMW plant is booming. In Spartanburg, Michelin's building a $750 million tire plant, and it's booming. And there are millions of virgin acres down there. And what's the beauty about North Carolina, South Carolina, and a lot of these other states? All you have to do is go down with a backhoe. You want to put a building in, you want to site a plant, go down with a backhoe, and you dig trenches and you put new infrastructure in. Here in Pennsylvania, we are an old industrialized state, and we have a lot of areas that we have to pull up old infrastructure. I mean, just look at the infrastructure in the city of Harrisburg and what it's going to cost to pull up old water lines, sewer lines, and we've got Philadelphia, we've got Pittsburgh, we've got cities all over. So we have a lot of challenges, and we really have to get our act together fast. And we were just talking about revenue. I was out with a group of senators last evening having dinner. No staffers, no lobbyists, rules, no code ties. And we're just talking. And if you think about it, I know at least probably 10 couples from York that live in York, and they have homes in Florida, and they are now Florida residents. So they don't pay taxes in PA anymore. And a lot of people are leaving, they're retiring, and they're leaving Pennsylvania, and they're moving to southern states where it's warmer. We've had a tough winter. I mean, just think about the changes that we have 10,000 people every single day that are turning 65 for the next 20 years. It's pretty amazing. So we have a lot of challenges, but I think if we can make some decisions, and we can make some decisions pretty fast, and I just came from a transportation here, and they were talking about the Delaware Port Authority, and Eugene Pasquale was there, and some other members, and they were talking about how they've been working on this for 8 years, and I'm like, geez, 8 years, that's like an eternity. So we got to get some things done. So what can all of you do? You can, your House member, your senator, just keep communicating and push and demand and get more aggressive and get more aggressive. But we have to keep the pressure on. So this is quite an education for me, and people are concerned. Number one, I can assure you one thing. I've had people say to me, "Man, we don't want you to go to Harrisburg and become one of them." Trust me, I can assure you that's not going to happen. And then people are saying, "We hope you don't get frustrated." I didn't get where I am in my business career and in life by being frustrated. I become more determined. If I can't get in the front door, I figure out where the back door is, or the side door. Or, I have tools at home. I have hammer drills. I'm willing to tunnel under the building and come up through the safe, wherever sort of like the George Clooney movie when the big jewelry break-in. So we'll stick with it, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning. Thank you.
For Scott, questions, not presentation of your own issues and argument of your own issues. Questions for Scott. He's very candid. He'll answer your questions. Go ahead, Dave.
Senator Wagner, your opening salvo in changing culture in Harrisburg about about honoring felons in the Capitol. Can you tell people about that?
Well, I think it's, I circulated a resolution, and I think we're talking about ethics over in the Capitol. The Senate had a gift ban bill that we were working on passing. Actually surprising, we don't have a majority of senators that agree with that. So, but I just think, listen, it's not right. It's, you walk down the hallways, and it's not and I heard a conversation, this is how I got on. It wasn't I went up with this mission, but somebody was just talking in the Senate one day, it's really a shame we're talking about, this ethics bill, but meanwhile we have felons' portraits hanging in the hallway. So I thought that was interesting. So, in my real world, I was actually going to buy some bubble wrap and get with the janitor and take them down, but I was advised that I would be probably arrested for tampering with state property. Well, then I was going to put bed sheets over them. Or now I was told that maybe we want to put a plaque on that just describes that they're convicted felons. And, but I just think it's wrong. But to think that, and I, for this group, you may find this somewhat humorous because it's, you have to have a little humor up here. But we had a conversation last week about this, the gift ban bill, and we have some people that are not in favor of it. And I just think everything should be banned. As a matter of fact, I've been out for dinner probably 4 times. I was out with a friend of mine 8 weeks ago, and the executive director of her association was there, and we had dinner, and at the end of the evening, I just said, I want the bill. And they wanted to wrestle me and argue, and I said, listen, it's just much easier for me to pay the bill. And I paid the bill, and the gentleman has been up here for 40 years and said, in 40 years, I've never seen that happen. And I just think and I'm fortunate because I can afford to do that. But, so why don't we come up with another plan, and I threw this out on the humor side. You've heard of, you know what a wedding registry is when a bride's going to get married? Well, we should have like a gift registry for all the House and Senate members up here, and you should post on your registry that you want a case of Louis Jadot 1962 Cabernet, or if you need a pair of jumper cables, I want jumper cables, and maybe, who knows, maybe we can trade gifts. Maybe there's something to be had here. But I think at the end of the day, all humor aside, this is the corruption that's up here, and it's got to stop. And so, I'm moving on to other things, but people get my point, and you understand. So, thank you.
Senator Wagner, thank you for being here. In the statement of reform, there's been a lot of debate about downsizing the legislature, and there's legislation. Prior to the 67 or 68 convention, we had a part-time legislature. I believe that's real reform. I'd like to know your opinion. Do you support downsizing the legislature or doing what many states have done and having a part-time legislature?
Without a lot of research, I believe that the legislature should say, the Senate should stay the size that it is. I think that the House should be downsized. It can easily be downsized by 1/3. And I think this should be a part-time, it should be a part-time legislature. Now, there are a lot of activities in the constituent offices, and my staff members are very busy. But this should not be what it's turned into, and it's a full-time culture, and it's wrong.
Person who has not had an opportunity to ask a question at the end of the line, please come up here, sir. The three of you have asked questions already. Your question, sir.
Can you tell us where Leader Pileggi is on paycheck protection?
Majority Leader Pileggi tells us he's a yes vote, but he doesn't want to have the bill come on the floor and we lose it. And where we have a 22 yes situation and we have a 5 no situation. But hey, listen, at the end of the day, let's again, I think we need to know who is who and who's not who. It's time, and you know what? If we start doing some of that, I think it might start shaking out some of the dead wood.
Senator Bruce Rader, thank you in advance for taking my question. It's on, you mentioned Senate Bill 76 is dead for this term. Do you see it coming up in September?
Well, here's the problem. Senate Bill 76 was in a committee and was scheduled to come out of that committee and had a certain number of co-sponsors. Senator Argyle told me that he had 1 or 2 Democrats that were co-sponsors that have pulled off. So, again, the budget, there's a lot of things going on
right now, and there could be some negotiation. The budget's a big deal. Like I said, I'm here, and I think that there are probably, I would say that half the senators are also here, and they want to see something happen. So there's a huge opportunity. And, you know, it also maybe boils down to how nasty the governor's willing to get, too. I mean, I'd like to see this guy get a little nasty. You know, he hasn't been nasty for 3.5 years. So maybe it's time, maybe we need to start getting nasty across the street and get something done. So.
Thanks for being here, Senator. You talk about ethics and morals and the such, and then representatives should kind of man up on the issue and take a stance. When it comes to Common Core, a lot of organizations in Pennsylvania stand to make a lot of money off of this. It's not the parents, it's not the children, it's not even the schools. It's a lot of special interest organizations. A lot of money changing hands in Harrisburg to promote Common Core. Will you take a stand and say this top-down approach from the Candyman is not what's right for our children, and the corruption involved with these organizations who are going to make money is not a good thing for education? Would you be willing to take that stand?
My position, you have to understand that I've come to Harrisburg. I've been here almost 90 days, and I have a lot of issues being thrown at me, and I am opposed to Common Core and its concept. And yeah, you're exactly right. It's back to there's more tentacles, and the tentacles involve dollars. So it's wrong. And you know, I have a great opinion. Listen, I think the school systems have to change and reinvent themselves. I mean, in York, for example, I was told by a school superintendent that in the local sort of region, if you take Millersville, E-Town, York College, Penn State, and probably one other, there are 400 student teachers that are going to graduate this year. In this one district, he only has need for 4. So why are we pushing all these teachers out? And we need to start focusing more on the trades. We need to revamp. And you're talking to a person. I barely got through high school. I grew up on a farm, and my problem was I grew up on a farm, and I had such a great childhood and a great life. I couldn't wait to get home every single day, work on the farm, drive machinery, and go to the next farm, make money. And then I spent a year at Williamsport Community College. But not everybody is geared towards going to college. And I think you're going to find that the technical trades are going to pay dramatic salaries over the next couple of years. I will tell you right now, in another sort of quick problem, another issue in York County or in our South Central region, the Manufacturers Association has employers, members that have 3,500 job openings for skilled people. They can't find them. We right now cannot find a mechanic at Penn Waste, and we've been advertising. We've been putting the sticky tabs. We put sticky tabs the last 2 Sundays on the paper advertising drivers and mechanics. We have not had a single mechanic walk in, and it's so. I think the education system needs to completely reinvent itself. So. And I don't think Common Core is the answer. So, thank you.
Notwithstanding your superintendent, $115,000 per year, here you talk pers and sirs. I have not heard anything about political pensions. Pennsylvania Constitution, Article 2, Section 8, salary and mileage and no other compensation whatever. The 2 gentlemen that Eichelberger and Fulmer replaced walked away with $80,000 up front and nearly 6-figure pensions the rest of their lives. And other than the 2-termers, 1 term in the House and 1 term in prison, who probably don't get pensions, the rest of them are creating a largesse of money that, based on the Constitution, they don't deserve. Are you going to address that?
Well, again, that gets back into the whole pension reform issue, but I will tell you that when I went down, the day actually that I was sworn in, I went downstairs that afternoon and did my paperwork. I haven't been employed by anybody else other than myself for most of my life. So, to fill out paperwork and walk through with the HR person, but I declined the pension. I don't take health benefits. My admin assistant asked how I would like to handle my expense report, and I said, well, there won't be an expense report because I don't turn any expenses in. But I think that Senator Fulmer and Eichelberger both elected not to take the pension, and it's a step. We're leading by example, and we could go on about what's going on in the House and Senate, and that's why we need to make this pension change. And I think that, I don't know how to spin this, but there are many members that are still over there that were participated in the 2001 vote to increase the pensions and the factor and everything. And, and they will admit that it was, probably not a good vote, but they're not in support of like all this pension reform. So you know what, it's time to fish or cut bait over here. So, I hope I answered your question.
Sir, I like the way you talk. I grew up at a farm. My brother's job was to castrate the pigs. My job was to wring their noses, and I didn't like it a lot. But my big concern now that I just spit tax when I see that the states are surrendering their authority to the federal government and the judges are making decisions and we don't have anything but yellow-bellied cowards backing down and not stand up for the things that our people have voted for.
That's a great point. The other thing, I think, maybe what happened in Virginia is maybe a turn of the tide. I will tell you, if any of you read the Wall Street Journal, there are a lot of things that need to happen in Washington that are trickling down. And we clearly have a president that is out of control. I mean, this guy, he's, the heck with Congress and the Senate. He's going to do what he wants to do. I'm obviously watching very close, on some of the stuff he's doing with the NLRB and recess appointments. And, listen, everybody's complaining about the high price of gasoline, and, we have train accidents up in Canada, but we're not passing the Keystone pipeline. And, this doesn't make any sense. It's all political. But, probably the largest lobbyist group that would be opposing the Keystone pipeline would be the railroad industry. And, does anybody know who owns one of the railroads? That guy's name is Buffett, I think. So, and now we've got an environmentalist, was it named Tom Steyer's in. Again, it's back to all this, lobbyist special interest groups. But if any of you, and I'm in some form or fashion, we're going to circulate, something in the Senate and send it to, our representatives from congressmen from Pennsylvania and our senators. But last week, and actually for the last month, there have been articles about U.S. drug companies buying drug companies, and one specific is Medtronic, is working on buying an Ireland-based company, and through a technique called inversion, which is it's a tax loophole, and they're buying this company in Ireland for 25% more than the market capitalization because the corporate taxes are 1/3 over there what they are. We need to reform our tax code, and so again, we need to put the pressure on Washington. And so I had a conversation yesterday, and I'm looking in some form or fashion to circulate a letter that all of the senators, all 50, would send to all of our congressmen and senators that we need to get things done. And again, all of you remember that I think a lot of you are here today because you care, and I'm sure some of you write checks. So it's important to put a note on your check like, let's get something done, or this is your last check. So, Todd, how are you doing?
Pretty good. Yeah, you were critical of this concept of making sure the votes are there before bringing something to a vote. And the danger in that, and there's some real concern in that because of our we have rules in the legislature that say that once something comes to a vote, amendment or a bill, that once it gets voted down, then it cannot be reconsidered again in that session. That's the problem. If we can change that rules to allow for reconsideration, then we can bring these things to a vote and force these legislators to show their hand.
Todd, that's a great point, and I'm gonna rely on Jason and some other people. But this could be called a cell phone. This could be called a PDF. It could be called many things. So maybe we have to paycheck protection. We have to figure a way, because I always believe in you got to figure out a way to get it done, and so that's our problem. But I think at the end of the day, if the vote for paycheck protection comes up, and we have 22 yeses and we have 5 noes, I think people in the state of Pennsylvania and the people in those districts of the senators that voted no need to know that they voted no.
okay? And it's like, let's see who the real people are, whether they're willing to stand up and say yes or I can't vote for that. So I just think we're moving into the period of being a coward is over, and this place is loaded with them, and it's all tied to being to the re-election process. So
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I've never heard a state senator speak truth to power as Scott has done here today. He's told it like it is. Many of us who are outside the process are afraid to say some of the things that he said because we will be excluded. They won't let us come into their offices. We want to be thought well of by various powerful figures. I've been guilty of that myself. So I'm very admiring of a person who, when he was outside, spoke aggressively, and now he's inside and he still speaks aggressively. Thank you very much, Scott.